Welcome back to Adaptive Humans, the podcast for real talk and intentional growth. I'm your host, Jami de Lou. Around here, we return to three anchors: how we navigate our emotions, how we adapt across differences, and how we steady ourselves when stress or triggers show up. Because that's what helps us stay human when life gets real. Today, we're digging into something so many of us are experiencing right now. Even if we don't have the language for it, it's called change fatigue. Not the corporate buzzword, but the human experience that shows up in our bodies, in our cultures, in our emotional bandwidth. Let's start by grounding ourselves in a definition. Recent research describes change fatigue as a state of exhaustion, apathy, or resignation caused by continuous, rapid, or overlapping organizational changes that outstrip people's psychological resources. So, meaning that things move faster and in this constant state of change before we can really steady ourselves around the last change that just happened. It shows up as stress, overwhelm, reduced motivation, lower productivity potentially, resistance to new initiatives, and growing absenteeism and turnover can also occur. 2025 data is sounding the alarm. Gallagher's 2025 Employee Communications Report found that 44% of HR leaders see change fatigue as one of the top 5 barriers to achieving their goals. A 2025 survey summarized by Wiley warns of a cascade effect that constant change plus rising stress triggers compounding crisis in engagement, mental health, and performance if leaders don't intervene. So when you think about that, leaders are put in a really unique position to try to help steady things with their teams, but they themselves are also fighting through and navigating through this constant barrage of change. And while leaders are meant to have the skill set, that's why they got to this place in the organization, they're humans too. And so we're all navigating this dynamic, changing environment that's happening in our society, in our workplaces, and in our families. So today, through our 3 segments of Beyond the Bio, Brave Enough Moment, and the Just Be Reset, we're going to go deeper into how change fatigue shows up, how it impacts us, and what we can do about it. So let's get into it. Beyond the bio, the human layers that help shape us beyond titles and labels. I want to share an example from my own experience to bring to life how I've seen change fatigue impact people, in particular at this busy end of year time. I could probably tap into a million different examples, but I'm going to share one of my own. This past month has been a swirl of travel, caregiving, grief, supporting clients, podcast production, and continuing my research and design work in leadership development. My calendars kind of looked like a Tetris board that someone shook in the middle of the game. And normally, I would be one of those people that just double down, grind through, deliver on everything, make it all happen. That's something that I know I've been known for. But this time, things just hit differently. I found myself staring at a blank cursor, trying to ideate, trying to create, reading the same sentence over and over, and nothing was landing. Not because the work was complicated, but because my capacity was gone. I was literally trying to set up a podcast recording in a hotel room, telling myself, my podcast is called Adaptive Humans. I can adapt. And the internal critic showing up to say, come on, Jami, focus. You've done harder things than this. In fact, one of my close friends in our group chat said, you can do hard things, Jami. And I responded, yes, I can. But I also said to my girlfriends, I do want the universe to know I also welcome ease. So the truth of the situation, it wasn't about discipline. It was about the load. My clients were stretched and pivoting. My family was overwhelmed with grief and change. Some of my dear ones are also navigating loss, illness, and transitions. Elders in my family, or tribe, as we like to say, is this broader collective community that I live amongst, are facing declining health. And some of the elders, like my father in law, have just recently become our ancestors. I've had nearly a dozen elders in my life pass in the last 4 years, 5 in the last year, and it's compounding grief. And if you take that with the change fatigue that's occurring in workplaces and in our society, I know I'm not the only one experiencing this. Even if it's not grief in losing a loved one, so many of us are carrying compounding loss and change from a range of areas in our life, going from everywhere from the workplace to our homes to society as a whole. And that day, when I think back on making the decision to pause the podcast and to really reevaluate what all was on my plate, there's something important that I remembered. Change fatigue isn't about motivation. It's about humanness. And I found myself with an opportunity to practice what I preach, what I coach clients around, what I've led organizations around strategy of being people-centered and human-centric. So I had to relentlessly look at what was on my plate and pause whatever I had the most control over. Most people in your life, in your organization, aren't resisting change. They're resisting the cost of the constant change without the space to recover. That's what we're naming today. If there are any items on your plate that you have some control over, and you can give yourself even the smallest amount of wiggle room, do it. Take the moment to breathe. I promise the boundaries are worth it. It will help keep you going. Brave enough moment. This is the action before the clarity, because countering change fatigue requires honesty. Here's the brave enough moment for this episode. Tell the truth about your capacity before your body tells it for you. Every December, leaders try to push harder. Let's sprint to the finish line. Let's get this done before the break. This is our busy season. We'll rest when we get through it. But here's what people are actually experiencing: nervous system overload, emotional residue from the year, cultural expectations around family, holidays, caregiving, and collective grief, identity fatigue from navigating difficult environments, unspoken fear about layoffs and instability, layoffs already hitting individuals and their families, and shrinking bandwidth. Leaders too often misinterpret this as resistance, having an attitude, or disengagement, when it's really about having that human threshold. So the brave enough moment is to pause and ask, what do I have capacity for? What needs to wait? Where am I pretending I'm fine? What are the invisible costs of the pace that I'm sustaining? This is action before clarity, because slowing down is an action. I'm going to say that again. Slowing down is an action. And believe me, I'm holding the mirror really close when I say this too. Saying this can wait is an action. Admitting something feels heavy is an action. Choosing a more sustainable pacing is an action. If we want to counter change fatigue, we must normalize saying, I'm at capacity, let's recalibrate, let's reprioritize. Or the classic end of year phrase that we all say but rarely mean, we can circle back to this in January. Or at this time of year, that sounds like a 2026 problem to solve. It's not weakness. That's leadership. That's teamwork. It's a human-centered way of engaging with people in your life. May we all do more of that. Just be reset. These are the practical, inclusive, nervous system grounded tools you can use right now. Here are 3 resets to help you regulate and recover from change fatigue, especially in this season. The first one, pick one thing that actually matters this week. Not 5, not everything, 1. Ask yourself, what is that one thing that, if done, reduces my mental load? And this is especially powerful for caregivers, for first-gen professionals, for leaders holding emotional labor, and anyone navigating multiple cultural roles. Reducing overwhelm starts with reducing competing priorities. The second reset is name your real capacity out loud. Try something like, I can take this on, but not this week. Or I need clarity before I can move. Or I'm not ignoring you, I'm just at capacity. Can we come back to this at another time? Or I can offer feedback next Tuesday. Does that work for you? When you name your limits, you prevent burnout. And you model emotional intelligence for your team, your community, and your family. The third reset is a 30-second micro regulation check-in. So if you take just 30 seconds, first, notice your breath. Drop your shoulders. Soften your jaw. Put your feet flat on the floor and ask yourself, what do I need right now? This is not just self-care, it's nervous system maintenance. And it changes the way you lead, communicate, and adapt across differences. Change fatigue isn't a flaw, and it isn't failure. It's the natural human response to prolonged uncertainty, emotional labor, cultural load, and unrelenting pace. But here's the good news. You don't need to just push through it. You can respond to it. You can honor it. You can interpret it. And you can sit with it. Thank you for joining me on Adaptive Humans today. If this episode has been of help to you, please share it with someone else in your network. And join me next week, where we'll do an end-of-year wrap-up, a grounding moment to help you reset before we enter the new year and those holiday festivities that we might be engaging in at the end of year. Until then, take good care of yourselves. And as always, I am brave. I am enough. I am brave enough. And so are you. This is Adaptive Humans, real talk, intentional growth.